was a horrible, evil person. Good looking, but not nice. And he had already lost one or two wives, and he was in search of another one. And he'd heard about the beauty of Tryphène, the young daughter of the King of Vannes in Brittany. This whole story takes place in Brittany. And so he decided that he would attend their summer fair in Vannes. And so, disguised as a soldier, he went to the fair, enjoyed himself, and he observed Tryphène and thought she was so beautiful. He actually found himself seriously falling in love with her. He went back home to his castle and he reflected on this young girl and thought, no, this is the one I would really like to have for my wife. And so he gathered together gifts that could be taken over to the King of Vannes, and his emissary was charged with asking for her hand in marriage. Well, the Duke of Vannes was a widower. He was a very kind king, much loved by his people, and he adored his daughter because her mother had died in childbirth and she was all he had. And he felt that she was too young to be married, and he definitely did not want her to be marrying the Duke of Comorre. This was an absolute no. And he said no, and he dispatched these people back to the Duke of Comorre with the message, an emphatic no. Thank you very much, but no. Well, the Duke of Comorre was not a man that you say no to. So this time he decided that he would go himself, but he also took his army with him. And he arrived at the chateau of the King of Vannes, the army hidden away in the distance. And again he asked for the hand of Tryphène in marriage. And again the King of Vannes said no. This time the Duke of Comorre informed him that there would be a war if he did not allow him to marry his daughter. Meanwhile, Tryphène was terribly upset. She did not want to leave the kingdom of Vannes. She did not want to leave her father's chateau. She didn't really want to get married just yet, and she certainly didn't want to marry this awful person, good looking though he might be. And when she realised that a war was likely to ensue, she went to the chapel because she was very devout, and she went to the chapel to pray for some kind of deliverance, some way out of this situation, that she would perhaps not have to marry this man and that there would be no war. And as she prayed, St. Gildas came to visit, and St. Gildas was very important in Brittany in those days. And he said to Tryphène, marry him, if not there will be serious bloodshed, and your father loves his people. He would not want a war. But I will give you this ring. This ring is white. If it ever goes black, you know your life is in danger. It will protect you. You can get help if you know that it is black and you are in danger. And so she thought about this and she prayed a lot more, and in the end she went to her father and said, Father, I will marry him. I do not want war. You do not want your people to be killed, and I do not want them to be killed. I will marry him. He was not happy about this, but he then spoke to St. Gildas and he explained about the ring and that hopefully everything would be okay. And so he consented because he really did not want war either. And so there was a wonderful marriage, lots of festivities, hundreds of people attended the wedding, and it went on for 2 or 3 days. The local population came in to celebrate with them, and eventually off went Tryphène to the Duke of Comorre's castle. And in fact, he was actually so much in love with her, he quite changed his character. He was a very nice person, he was very gentle, he was very considerate, to the point where his subjects and his own family could not believe the transformation. It was really quite remarkable. And she actually found herself falling for him. And they started to get on very well together, and she could almost admit to being just a little bit in love with him. And so the day he announced that he had to go to a meeting in Rennes and would be away for many months, she felt quite sad. And she waved him goodbye and off he rode, and she spent her time walking in the beautiful gardens of the castle, and as a devout girl she spent much time in the chapel praying. And in the chapel there were 4 tombs. And she'd never really questioned whose tombs these were, but she always felt drawn towards these tombs and would pray there. And time went by and time went by, and word came that he was on his way home. And she was pleased he was going to be coming home because she had some special news for him. And when he arrived, he couldn't wait to see his wife. He really missed her, and he really was quite a transformed character. And he rushed into the castle, rushed to their room. There she sat, his beautiful wife. But as she stood up, he saw her swollen belly. He recoiled in horror, stormed out of the room, leaving her standing there, wondering why. It was obvious that he had seen that she was with child. She expected him to be delighted, but clearly he was furious, and she really did not understand why. And as her hands were on her belly and she looked down, she could see that the ring was turning black. And she knew that she was in danger. She did not know why, she did not understand why, but she knew she was in danger. And he left the castle and she went down to the chapel to pray. And she was there a very long time, and midnight started to chime. And as the chimes got closer and closer to 12, she sensed somebody near her. She assumed it was him. He'd come to get her. And there she was, heavily pregnant. If she was in danger, how could she protect herself? And she turned round. But there was 4 ghostly figures of women there. "Who are you?" she said. And they said, "We are his wives, who he killed. And you are in great danger because you are with child. You must escape from here." And Trifen said, "How can I? There's a dog, there's a guard dog. How can I escape the guard dog? There's a wall to climb over, and I'm 8 months pregnant as well. And there's a forest to go through. How can I possibly escape? And how can I get back to my father's house? How could this be?" And one of the ghostly figures said, "Here is the poison for the dog, the poison he used to kill me." And the other one said, "Here is the rope to scale the wall, the rope that he hung me with." And the third one said, "Here is fire to light your way through the forest, the fire that he burnt me with." And the fourth one said, "And here is a staff to move the forest branches out of your way, to walk safely with, the staff that he cracked my skull with." And so she took the poison, the rope, the fire, the staff, and she poisoned the dog, and she miraculously climbed the wall, and she walked through the forest with the light to guide her and the staff to keep her steady, to keep her balance. And night turned to day, and the day went on, and night came again. And meanwhile, the Duke of Comorre had discovered that she was missing and went in search of her, couldn't find her anywhere. She carried on walking and walking, but she was 8 months pregnant. She was tired, exhausted. She eventually found a shepherd's hut, and so she found shelter in the hut. Meanwhile, the Duke of Comorre went to the top of his tower, and he looked out, and at midnight he saw the raven. And at sunrise he saw the swift flying by. And at noon he saw the seagull. And at sunset he saw a white dove, and he thought, "Now I know where she is. That is where she is. I will follow where the white dove went." And he called some people with him, and off he went to find her, riding as fast as he could through the forest. Meanwhile, she had given birth, as you can imagine, with the trauma of discovering her husband was this cruel, escaping, climbing walls, dealing with guard dogs through forests. Of course she gave birth early. This was inevitable. And she hid her young son because she saw the ring turning black yet again. And she could hear horses' hooves. But meanwhile a falcon flew down, and she recognized the gold ring on the falcon's foot. It was her father's falcon. And she said to the falcon, "Please, take this ring. Take it, give it to my father. He will understand, and St. Gildas will understand. I need their help. I need their help." And the falcon took the ring and he flew off. And meanwhile the Duke of Comorre arrived, he got down from the horse and he said, "You and your child will not kill me or destroy my castle." And he sliced off her head. And in 2 parts the body fell to the floor. And he rode off, completely without any compassion or remorse. He was so desperate because, you see, there was a prophecy that if he had a son, the son would bring about the downfall of the entire kingdom of Comorre. But meanwhile, the falcon had taken the ring to the king of Van, who called St. Gilda, and they set off on their horses, and they found Trifen. Distraught, her father got down from his horse. His only child, the only memory of his wife, there, lying dead in a pool of blood, decapitated. But he heard the sound of a baby, and they went into the hut and found her child, a beautiful little boy. And St. Gilda touched her body, and it rose up. And he said to her, "Take up your head." She put her head back on. She carried her child. And they went to the castle of the Duke of Comorre. And St. Gilda knocked on the door. Open up, I have your wife and your son." A second time he knocked. Open up, I have your wife and your son." And a third time. And then the child started to cry. And at that moment, with a great rumbling and a great roar, the castle started to crumble and fall. And the Duke of Comorre was no more. And miraculously saved, Trifen returned to the kingdom of Van with her father and St. Gilda.
Well, that's a cheerful story. I mean, it has got a happy ending.
Well, yes. I wouldn't have told it to you if she was just going to end up decapitated.
I did wonder there for a bit.
Yeah, I can see your face looking a little bit anxious. It's like, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be a decent story tonight.
Cool.
But it's a very typical or traditional Breton fairies, of folk tale. Because I have friends in Brittany, and I would buy a different book each time I would go, and then started to read a lot of the different folk tales and some of the legends, and I really got into it. So I thought tonight I would tell one of those.
That's really good.